Mike Wehde. How are you, brother? Can you hear me okay? Hey,
I
Mike,
hear you. Can
can
you
you
hear me?
hear me? I can. How are you, brother?
I'm just awesome, man. I'm don't know my name half the time. I'm running around so busy right now, but
I feel the exact same thing, man. So that's great. Let's hope we can get one decent thought out of the two of us today.
yeah.
Man, I love your background. We're going to introduce you in a minute, but first off,
Brought you
where are
something,
you?
man. I brought you these.
Oh man, and I so want those. Curse you, Mike Wehde. Those are donuts from the donut shop, huh?
Yeah, I'm in Swillerby's Donuts right now. They just closed, so I thought it'd be good to stay while it's quiet and hang out here a little bit.
So that's the great thing about a donut shop is it closes, in the afternoon. No sane person would want a donut at 3 p.m.
Hey, so here's the thing, being a church planner, you can't find any place to study. Your home is full of kids. You're usually homeschooling or something crazy's going on. You go to Starbucks, it's crazy. You got crazy, extrovert lady next to you. But I got an ice cream shop that opens at 12, so I can go there in the morning. And then my donut shop closes at 1:30, so I come here in the afternoon.
That's cool. So here's the thing. I gotta stop and I gotta introduce you because you are living everybody's best life right now. So here's kind of the cool thing, right? Like you are literally living um, an incredible church planning dream here. Our topic today, if you're just joining us, is how to start a church and a business at the same time. We're with a good friend of mine, Mike Wehde, one of the coolest guys out there that you probably don't know unless you've been a part of the NAM church planning training and assessment over the past few years. I met Mike through Mac Lake. Mike and Mac go way back, and Mike was over the assessment for what region was it, Mike?
Well, I had kind of the East Coast. I was Miami up to Boston, those teams, six or
Yeah,
six cities.
and I'll tell you this: like Mike doesn't do anything halfway. He does everything well. He runs a gym. He runs a church that he planted down on is it Space Coast or what part of Florida? What would you call the region of Florida you're in?
It's the Northeast Daytona. We're in Palm Coast, Florida, so it's the Daytona Beach region.
And on top of that, he buys businesses, he purchases businesses. His wife founded also entrepreneurial. She actually founded Trades of Hope, and so
Mhm.
you've got an entrepreneurial family running businesses. But Mike buys these businesses, staffs them with missional minded thinkers, and trains church planners out of them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, Mike, I would love to hear your kind of your story, because one of my favorite stories that you tell is how you got sucked into ministry. And I say sucked in because God kind of suckered you into it a bit, and I want to hear that story. I'd love everybody to hear it.
Yeah, God was working with Mac Lake and partnering to dupe me into ministry. And so I went to Dallas Theological Seminary with Mac Lake, and I know a lot of the early stories of Mac if you ever want to hear any. Now he's a guru, but I knew him when he worked in the bookstore. And so Mac is a great friend of mine. I went to Dallas Seminary to be a Greek and Hebrew scholar, want to be a professor. I want to be one of those, those old mucky mucks who are writing old books about some linguistics or etymology of some word and sound brilliant. So we left Dallas Seminary, and my wife Holly's parents weren't doing so great, and they wanted to get out of their business. They wondered if we would run their business for a year, and we said sure. We're not sure what we're doing just next, so we thought we'd go into business. So we took over their business, allowed them to retire, and I told them, you got about a year. and we'll pay your retirement for a year, but then I'm probably going to go be a professor somewhere. 1 year turned to 2 and to 3. All of a sudden, I found out I was pretty good at business. Both my wife and I were. We grew that business from 91 to 2005, and multiple locations. Ended up starting another business, and turned out I really liked business. Now, the funny thing about that was I was serving in the church as a deacon, Sunday school teacher, all that stuff. But I just felt alive out in the community with customers. Our team would pray for customers. Our team would see customers come to the Lord. We sold property to customers that came to the Lord Jesus, and it was really kind of like a dream come true just to see God working in through us in the marketplace. And so I was pretty much there. We felt like we were, at our destination up in New England. We had a great neighborhood, a great church. I helped start a Bible college up there. So I was just like, what else do I need? Well, then I kept visiting Mac Lake down in Myrtle Beach, who started a church there. And I showed up one day and God just kind of rattled my chain a little bit. All these new converts, and a whole different way of doing church as a church planner, as opposed to my 180-year-old church I was in. And I just like, Mac, where'd all these people come from? They come from other churches. He said, no, these are all new in the community. These are all converts. And then he looks at me, as you know him to do well, Peyton. He says, why do you want to plant a church? And I'm like, oh, no, wait a minute. I told God I'll never pastor. I'm never going to plant a church. And those few little words haunted me and Holly all the way back up to New England as we were driving, and just wouldn't let me go. So we thought about church planting. We brought it to our church. They weren't so keen on it. So we decided to put it on the back burner. And then one day my wife woke up and we were on the front porch having coffee, and she said, hey, read this card. And I took the card. It had a Bible verse on it. At the bottom, it says, promise me we won't keep building our kingdom. We'll go build God's eventually. And I'm like, whoa, what's that all about? I thought we were living the dream. And she said, just pray on this. I think we're supposed to go do something else. So I took it like every guy. I took it to work, threw that card on my desk, and didn't think much about it. 2 days later, our business burnt to the ground. Lost everything. It was all gone. Just nobody got hurt, but we lost many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we looked at each other as the fire trucks came without any water. 5-alarm fire. Not one truck had any water to put this fire out. We thought, I guess God's doing something, and we were supposed to do something else and maybe go plant a church. So that started our church planting journey. And then we came down here in 2005. We started Life Coast Church. Palm Coast is a heavy northeastern city. As you know, Peyton, most here are from either New York or Boston, high percentage of Catholic faith. And so starting a church plant and making money to feed your 5 kids is, really tough to do. So we brought some of the business down here and continued on with that word called co-vocational before I even knew it was a word, just mostly survival at that time. But so I just drove down here and started a church, and I said, God, how did you do it? Because I was so adamant I would never pastor. I'd never wanted to preach a sermon. I just God, let me serve you in any way but that. And he had the last laugh. So
that's fantastic. So fast forward to where you're at now. You started a gym. If I'm not mistaken, that was the first thing you kind of did once you were pastoring. Kind of walk us through, you're pastoring a church plant. Your church is thriving. I mean, it's a large church. It's not a small church. It's not like you got like this little home study in your living room that meets on Tuesday nights. I mean, you were pastoring a robust church nowadays. Tell us a little bit about, how did that happen? You probably needed to start a business, like you needed to hit yourself in the head repeatedly with a hammer.
No, ministry was pretty busy. Matter of fact, Holly had just stepped away from leadership to start Trades of Hope a year before. So we were in our 5th year. of church planting, and she started Trades of Hope, which is, if you don't know, is a global fair trade organization that rescues women out of poverty and sex trade. So that was a phenomenal business. She is 10 times the business person than I'll ever be. I look up to her and steal most of her skills and gifts. But somewhere in there, about a year and a half later, I was lifting at a gym and sensed about 90% of the people in the gym I was lifting with do not go to any church whatsoever. But being a trainer for so many years, I think at the time, 30 years into fitness training, I was training many of them and finding that they were all seeking something better in life. They were all at the gym, usually kind of like beauticians and bartenders. You get to hear the deeper story of why they're there. And then they start talking about their marriage, they start talking about their depression or whatever, and they're hoping the physical fitness will help them get victory over that. And so I just thought about it for a minute and said, man, there's so many in here that need Jesus, and yet me inviting them to Life Coach Church is probably not going to happen. They're probably not going to come, and that's okay. But what do we do about that? And so the opportunity arose for me and my son to take this gym over and use it as a missional endeavor. We just thought, okay, here's a way that we can extend our reach into the community and not be necessarily Sunday morning church focused, but how do we take what we have and breathe it into the community more? And so we're going to lift anyway. Why not do it missionally and be in control of the operation? You know, make sure that we create an environment that's life-giving and open doors that way. So yeah, so that was about 8 years ago, and you're exactly right. Taking over a gym on top of running a business and your wife running a church and your wife running another business, probably the last thing I needed to do.
Yeah.
But you know, when what do they call it? The holy burn, that burning goes down below, like there's a need here. There's a gospel need here. There's people that are already have an affinity to me relationally as a gym guy, as a fitness instructor. Why not walk through the open door and let God handle the rest? So yeah. So
okay, but I have to say, Mike, it is unusual because you're fit. Like if you go out to eat with Mike, he will not eat bad food. He's going to eat the healthiest thing on the menu and probably grieve about it. Now you're running a donut shop, an ice cream shop, a pizza shop, and you're still fit. Like you're not like, you're not 400 pounds. I'm looking at you. You're not going to be on my 1,000-pound life. So I mean, it's really interesting because these are not the businesses you probably would have picked. But why did you pick them? I don't know, I'm throwing us for a curveball right now, but
yeah, you are. You're not following your schedule. No,
I'm
I'll tell
not.
you this. Tongue in cheek, if you follow Paul, he says, I want to become all things to all men, right? There are those who are fit, and then there are those who are not. How do we reach them all? But yeah.
That's rad. I love that.
we made a promise that if you get on your 10th dozen box of donuts, we'll give you a free gym membership, and I'll train you to make sure you stay healthy.
Are you serious?
Well, it's in the works. They all know.
That's amazing.
They all know that me and my wife and my son own a gym, and so there's people that kind of kid about it. At the same time, they ask, where's that gym again? Because I probably need to show up there eventually. So
it's amazing. So these are all relationship builders to a certain degree, right? Mm-hmm. So general principles now, because right there, we just got a nugget from you about even the kind of business wouldn't have normally been what you would have been passionate about or wanted to have done. But I like that general ministry principle of being all things. What are some other general principles regarding how business and ministry go together?
Well, missionally, obviously, their mandate is to go out. It's to go out and find that need. It's to go out and find where the gospel can be planted. And I love your book, by the way. I didn't get a chance to give you a review. I'd give you about an hour review right now because I think I've got 80% of your book highlighted in my Kindle. But the missional mandate is there, and so when you plan a church model or a church plant model that's attractional, like I did, and so now the energy and focus is on how do we get more to come in, even though it's a funnel to get discipled, it's still that initial entryway in. and it is really impossible to get them back out. Just a blanket statement there. I know there are those who are missionally minded, and then so you have what I feared I would always become as this pastor encouraging people to go out, and yet I'm just there encouraging them. Where am I going out? So to model that, so where is the gospel needed the most in our community? And it seems as if the business sector is largely untouched. I know there's a lot of marketplace ministries, but it's relatively new to have entrepreneurial or missional business-minded people to say, we're not necessarily running a business because we love our product. For instance, I love gyms, but I really could care less about donuts. And really, I got a lot of donuts. I got
Those look
cinnamon.
so good, dude. I want those. Can you mail them? Like, can you just pop to the post office on the way home?
And we have big donuts, so do I eat them? I really don't. I don't, and you might find that to be a little bit of disharmony. How can you sell things you won't eat, or, deal something you won't smoke, or whatever that thing is. But the thing is I want to find the environment where the people are going and use that as a tool to reach them with life-giving and relational characteristics. So if they're coming to donuts, if they're coming to ice cream, we live on the beach, they're coming to the beach. How do we meet them at the path instead of just marketing them to come into the church on a Sunday, which I always say is like up here on the hill, if you come up here, and they don't, they keep going to the beach. You've been down to Daytona, you've been down to Palm Coast yourself.
Yeah.
It's just great being on the beach. So,
amen.
So we got a vision a few years ago after that we took over the gym. We got a vision not just to run businesses that we like, but run businesses that have the best potential traction for relationships. So, ice cream, and they've all come to us. So we didn't know anything about the ice cream, but we were praying, God, how do we move forward with this missional vision you've given us, which is a lot bigger than I'm making it here. But at the time, it was like, what do you want us to do, God? And I get a call from a realtor. Hey, I know you guys are great. You'd love this ice cream shop. Peyton, my first thought was ice cream. I mean, look at me. Do I look like an ice cream guy, And, but we went down there and we did the circle prayer walk around it in about 6 days, and prayed. And God says, you're supposed to take this over. We used our business model principles. This thing has potential. Put our DNA, life-giving DNA. It's going to be great. And we took it over 2 years ago. It's been up almost 60%, even through COVID. And then to have a team that we get to invest in, and we change their worldview. It's not just a place for them to make money and go home and play Xbox. It's a place where they can, use some of the things we're equipping them and investing in them, and look at people differently when they come in the door. Changing a community by serving an ice cream cone instead of just being an ice cream scooper. We say you're a day maker, you're a smile maker, you're whatever it is for the day. We have these little quick. But you know what? It changes them at 18, 19 years old. They start thinking differently about the workplace.
Right.
And then the customers start coming and say, hey, she's my favorite. That Dawson, who's my son, he's my favorite because ... And then eventually 1 year in, I had 2 customers call me. They're 2 widowers, and they've been dating for a few months. They said, I heard you were a pastor. I said, who told you that? He goes, well, one of your employees let it slip. And we've been coming for 6 months. We'd like you to marry us in front of your waffle cone ice cream shop. We felt like God is starting back in our life and reinvigorating our faith, and we want to recommit and marry. Would you marry us? So I got to marry 2 customers right there at the beach in front of the ice cream shop, and my staff was there. And then they left, and we just looked at the staff and said, this is why we do what we do, because they probably would have never come to Life Coast Church, but they came to this place almost every day, and we got to change a life. So that's kind of how that works, is this, and we've got employees now that think of workplace as, a missional endeavor or a potential community changing job instead of just a money-making job.
That's really good, man. I love that. So one of the things you guys did was, I can't remember which business it was. Was it the ice cream shop or the donut shop, where it was kind of like everybody knew this place, right? Like it was kind of it was kind of a landmark in the community, and the owners were moving on. Do I have that right? And you guys came in. So one of them, you didn't start it. You actually came in, took it over, maybe enhanced it a bit or improve. I don't want to say anything that gets you in trouble, but is that the case where you kind of you swooped into a business that was beloved by the community and decided we're going to use this as a vehicle to love the community through it?
Yeah, the ice cream shop was run by an older couple who was ready to retire. Been there 12 years, right on the beach, well known, but they weren't, they just didn't have the energy to go to the next level. And we had that spirit to say, how can this now become a light? So we were able to take it over and just change the place into just a real life-giving atmosphere. And then the donut shop, just a year and a half later, the owner came to us and said, I see what you've done over there. I'm moving on.
Wow.
I don't want to sell this to anyone else because you guys will take care of my employees. You guys will. And the donut shop's famous. It's been in the New York Times. You've seen the donuts. They're incredible. They're masterpieces. I didn't make them. I have made them, but I won't. They're incredible. They're probably most people's daily allowance of calories in one donut. But
they're big, as all donuts should be.
They should be in. But, she just said, I see what you guys do, and I wouldn't want anyone else to run my baby.
Wow.
We've done that. So, just May 1st, we took over the donut shop. So we've taken over, but we also have started. Trades of Hope was started from scratch. And my middle son, in next Friday, is starting a takeout crepe shop and bubble tea bar right on the beach across from our ice cream shop. And he was living in San Francisco, was helping plant a church there, and he was a business owner, and as you know, everything shut down. He couldn't make any money. He came here, and I said, well, how about starting a business, and we'll show you how. And dude's got 9 employees, and I heard him yesterday. He's interviewing his employees, and he said, just so you know, we're a kingdom-minded business. We institute Christian values and life-giving customer service to this community. So if you've been in the Waffle Cone and Donut Shop, Swillerby's Donuts, that's what we're doing here. If you think that's a fit, let's move on. So
it's amazing.
24, he's got it, and he knows how God can use a business if we inject his values in it.
So I told you this, Mike, that I interview some famous people on here, relatively as famous as I think you can be in Christian circles without being Billy Graham. But here's a reality. I'm actually more excited about this interview than any of them that I've done so far. And I got a text from you that says this, and I want to share this.
Great.
This is the crazy ride you're on. You go, hey, I took over the donut shop Sunday and preached about the why on church on Sunday, and so many people got it. I was pleasantly surprised. This weekend we had a lengthy discussion about Jesus with our employees, with the mayor and a commissioner. And we sold 1,450 donuts and 1,830 ice cream cones. Crepe shop opens in 3 weeks.
All right.
Dude, you're a nut. You're an animal. So here's one of my questions, Mike. Talk to me a little bit about what is this like to, so church planner or, church planner starting up a church. Like if I talk to Anton Furrow, who came from here in San Diego, he went up, started a CrossFit gym, which is kind of like the first thing you did, right? He did that, but he said, I will never, ever consider planning a church without first starting a business. The reason why, he said, is I had instant community. I had instant space to meet, and I had instant income. It just made so much sense, but I think you kind of have to have that in you to a certain degree. So I wanted to ask, what does it take for an individual to be able to do what Anton Furrow did or what you do?
So I think even when I took over our first business, which was my wife's parents, I knew nothing. I had a theological degree, right? Before Jesus, in my teen years, I stole bikes because I was an angry kid and sold them. So I guess that was my first business. I made a lot of money stealing bikes and selling them. Glory to Jesus for rescuing me. But somewhere along the line in Massachusetts, I asked a Christian businessman to mentor me. And I said, I don't know enough. I need to know more. And I would say this, I would say a lot of people come to me regularly and my wife and say, I don't know how to do what you do. I would love to know if that's me or not, but I'm clueless and I'm not, I read 100 books and I still don't know. And I think that's the point, is that in our culture today, we're not teaching kids much at all about entrepreneurialism, about business. It's really just the basics of education. And so I think if you think that might be in you, we'll talk about this a little later about the coaching piece of it, but you need to get people around you to ask you the right questions as far as whether it's a disc, whether it's an Enneagram, but there's certain wirings that are wired for this a little more than others. Case in point, this is a church plant business tip for you. I use the ice cream shop to cultivate an environment for an internship. We had a youth pastor and a family pastor who wanted to plant a church, and he went to a Send gathering and all this stuff, and he came back as, I really want to start a coffee shop too. I heard those quotes. I don't want to do one without the other. And I said, well, I'm not sure you're that person. He goes, how do I find out? I said, well, I'm going to make you a manager of my ice cream shop. We're going to open the hood of this baby, and I'm going to see what you got. See if you can monitor the flow. And turns out he's a high C, and he'd be in the back cleaning when things weren't done up front and customers. And I said, what are you doing back there? I knew you'd appreciate organization. I'm like, no, I appreciate selling, making money.
Right.
You got to be up here decorating the ice cream and all that stuff. Because after about, and this was a 6-month internship, he came, he says, I'm not wired for business. And I said, man, it's so awesome that you found that out now, rather than run out there, try to start something. And if you do that and it's not your wiring, well, then you could not only wreck a business, you could wreck a church plant, you could wreck a marriage. Yep. There's a lot of stress involved in it. And so if you don't have that wiring, and it doesn't mean you've been to Harvard or get your MBA, it just means there's a certain wiring that can pull back, and where they say get up to that 30,000 square foot view, their 30,000 foot view, and see down what's really happening. Not everybody has that. On the other hand, you've got to have some financial savvy, some ability to understand marketing, customer service. That can all be had with coaching and mentoring.
So if someone were to come in, and we're going to talk about, you do have some coaching, mentoring that you do. But also, we're going to take questions in a minute here. But before we do that, I want to ask a little bit about how you would use. I want to ask about how you would use these businesses to train and mentor, like you spoke about. But before that, I do want to ask, just for the planner perspective, or the co-vocational minister who says, I want to do this, I think I got it. What does the financial model, like someone starting out on this, do they go to the bank and get a small business loan? Do they, how does the money end of it work for people starting to get their feet wet in business?
Yeah, that's usually the fear piece for everyone. That's the part that scares everyone to death. That's probably the easiest. For instance, there's people with money who go out and start businesses, they crash and burn. What is it? Is the rate 8 out of 10 fail in the first 2 years? Kind of like church planning used to be. There's some similarities, which there's some skill sets that overlap here, and there's a reason for failure. It's not always because God shut it down or the economy was bad. It's because you didn't have some things. So it's not always just money that should scare you. It should be some business principles that you're not catching. But the money piece, I just coached somebody yesterday for about an hour and a half. And the money piece is probably the easiest, especially right now. You could start a business relatively cheaply, depending on what you have in the bank, or if you got a side hustle going, you could do that. You could do a startup, let's say pool cleaning service or something like that. And you're just doing it at the end of the days until you grow that thing. You could do an online marketing or a social media, kind of business. Those are relatively cheap. they're usually labor intensive without a lot of return on investment. I generally coach people away from that. And to be honest with you, Peyton, I generally coach people away from starting a business, period, because it takes a long time. If you planted a church already, you know that planning a business is just as hard, more costly, and you wake up 2 years later and wonder if you're ever going to make a dollar. And but taking over a thriving business, buying somebody's sweat equity that they've put into this thing to make it and turn the corner, they've learned all these things and now they're making a profit, buying that so you don't have to do that is much better. It's way better. And so how do you buy a business? Again, there's ways you can either get business loans. There's Christian business investors that love startups. We've helped start up. There's a couple others that have helped start up Christian businesses, especially church plant models. Those who we've worked with a few where I've had a few come along say, if you get another church planter that's looking to do a business and they've gone through some of your coaching, I can see their strategy, their 5-year strategy, I'll invest in them. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But we have investors who are like, man, you show me the next one and we're going to take that and run with it. So after that, you've got SBA loans. I mean, you already know this, everyone knows the government is dying to give away money right now. Most of it they shouldn't be giving away. But SBA loans are really easy to be had. If you have coaching and mentoring to get you a strategy, a game plan, they'll get behind you. And it's a small upfront money down thing with a small interest payment. And as long as they can see that thing paying itself back in 10 years, you're good to go. So the money piece just takes some coaching. It's not the scariest piece. But again, I usually coach or counsel people away from starting something, unless it's just, a side job, a side hustle. That's great. Do your thing. I've got a lot of guys doing that, a lot of girls doing that. But if you want to make an actual co-vocational thing, it just takes a long time. And if you're going to start from scratch and start a church from scratch, you could be looking at 5 years later and both are barely making it, right? And you're wondering, did God call us to this, or did you get me into this, honey? But if you've got somebody else, especially now, I'll just give this a little tidbit. After COVID, there's a lot of boomers who started businesses 10, 15 years ago as retirement plans, and now they're done. They're just, I don't want to worry about COVID again. I don't want to worry about the government. I just need to move on. I've made my nest egg, and if I just sell this thing, I'd be great. 40 to 50% of them are dissolving their businesses. I just talked to somebody last week. Hey, I don't even know how to sell this thing. I'm thinking of just walking away. I'm like, don't walk away. This thing's profitable. It could really help another family get their kids to college. And I don't know how to do that. They just don't, and they walk away. You can comb around and get with some brokers, and they'll find people who are ready to walk away. And you would be amazed what some businesses are going for now, just because they just want to pad their nest egg a bit. They don't really care about what it's necessarily truly worth. They just want to know, okay, this thing's going to somebody that I can trust and I can move on. So those are out there in almost every community, especially now after COVID, where people just want to go hide up in the hills and be safe. And, so but that's
it was a traumatic time recently. I'm glad that you brought the COVID into it, because small businesses were closing left and right. And I think people were thinking, I don't want to ever live through that again. I had no control over that. Nothing that kept me afloat all these years was going to work during that. So, yeah.
So if a mom and pop have a great, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of restaurants. I like these takeout joints. But if they had a place that was shut down extended period of time and they have to walk away, there's a hole now in the marketplace for that particular product or service. And again, remember, we do kingdom business planting where there's a hole or a need for the gospel. So if the community is needing something, whether it's this commodity, this service, they're going to find it somewhere. Why not it be somebody who's got a kingdom mentality about that business? Right? Let's fill that hole with with a missional mentality of running a
Yeah.
business. So when they meet us, whether you're a plumber, donut maker, you name it, they're going to meet Jesus, not just the next business owner, because someone will fill that void. Someone will do it.
Amen. Amen. Well, you mentioned church plantology, which is quite indulgent for me. I appreciate that. But I kind of mentioned Paul's end game was really bivocational training with Priscilla and Aquila,
Yeah.
training those 32 named people. There are more that Paul, Acts 24, 20 verse 4, gives 8 more people that Paul's traveling out with that probably could be added. So there's 40. You can imagine others like Epaphras and others. They were all trained as tent makers. In fact, I outline when and how that started in Corinth with Priscilla and Aquila, and goes on. And I am actually getting ready to start an Ephesus hub here in San Diego. And we're figuring out what that looks like, some of the businesses that will incorporate into that Bible training on the ground, incubating and launching church plants. So Paul's end game has now become my end game. This is where this nearly 50-year-old man sees himself finishing up. So the question about how to train the next generation of missionary Bivo planters, that's kind of the burning question. I think that is the strategy that I am hearing, not just in myself, but and I know I've been talking to you about this since like 2016, both when we were working for NAM. But how do you see that as a way to train the next generation?
I love that you spent time with about Paul, because imagine, I kind of consider myself the kind of similar track of Paul. Imagine how much business training he had growing up. He was a Pharisee. He was on the fast track to the priest, right? I mean, probably very little business training and marketplace ministries. He didn't have any need for that. Here's where I'm heading. And I feel the same way. But now when you've been planted a church or been a pastor, you've been a pastor, and you see some things that happen in Christendom, especially American church. Business people come to church and they never know how they fit in. They've got this amazing gift set of reaching a community, attracting a community into their environment that they've cultivated. And they may make smiles, they solve problems, they fill needs, they feel like, man, I'm knocking this thing out of the park. They come to church and like, would you pass out bulletins? Would you, not sure what you need. Unless you're building a building, then we know what your need is. You get built, write me a check, right?
Right.
I was that business person. Like, I'm not quite sure where I fit here, but Monday through Friday, I feel like I'm just swinging like Mark McGuire. It's like, this is crazy. And I'm just now starting to understand how to marry these principles. I love guys like you, Brad Briscoe. I mean, how do we tear down the walls between sacred and secular? How do we start taking the people that are so highly gifted at reaching a community and changing it, even if it's because their products and services, and infiltrate them into our bodies more, and allow them to just do what they do well. We learn from them, we teach them. Our kids, our teens are always around business owners, right? There's a great book called The Pearls of the Kingdom. Talks about Old Testament priests and kings. Kings are really just that business sector and keeping things flourishing, and priests make sure they do it for God. It's like, but somewhere in the middle, the people are in tune with both, and they're understanding God's over all of this. There's no sacred, secular. It's all ministry. It's all spiritual. It's all kingdom advancement. How do we take our teens? How do we, just let them rub shoulders? Don't just get them jobs. Talk to the business owners first. I need them to understand a different mentality about business, where kingdom can flourish here. When they work for you, can you talk about it? Can you cast vision about how you do this? So if and when God calls them into different levels or layers of ministry / business, they just get it out of the gate. At 19, 20, they're like, I'm not just starting a business, I'm changing a community with the gospel with a business. And I think that really makes sense for Holly and myself. we think about, especially the way church is now, because we've 15 years in, our people get us. When we say we're starting a crepe shop, this will be our 5th business in the last 7 years. They're like, yeah, of course, that's who you people are, But instead of just saying go out in the community, we're like, come with us, come with us out in the community. Now we're starting to understand, okay, what can we do within our church that helps raise people up? So we're developed entrepreneurial coaching pieces, not just for Life Coach Church, but for the community. People have lost their jobs and like, how do I start something? Come on over to the church. We've got this coaching seminar. It's a 5-day or once a week for 5 weeks. I want to teach you how you can do this too. We want to go down to kids VBS instead of just VBS about pirates and all this. That's all great. We want to have a kidpreneur program. You can bring them to VBS, and if you want your kids to learn how even at 9, 10, 11 years old, they can be problem solvers like business people, man, they can all of a sudden start thinking this way. Teenpreneur programs where their teens come in now for a camp and they start developing business strategy by doing a census of the community. What are their needs out there? How do we fill those needs with a business? So by the time they graduate, they've already been coached to think entrepreneurially and think missionally about it. And then we have investment pieces to come in and say, we'd like to help you start that. So I think if we don't get more intentional about including business people and not pastors running entrepreneur programs, our business people find a real good way to serve the body this way and help coach, help guide, even help invest. I've got 5 or 6 that are already clearing out some room for interns to come in. Hey, you're going to graduate here. Would you work with us for 3-6 months? I want to show you under the hood. And if we can get commitment like that with our business community who are believers, I think a lot can change. And, and here's the thing, Peyton, I wanted to make sure I said this. I got into entrepreneurial church planning or co-vocational because of financial need. I didn't even realize it was something I loved to do. But as we keep moving forward, I believe the need will be there, not because of financial, but because how the culture views church. And we're in Florida. This is God bless America. Don't make my Florida like America, right? It's like, we're just free here, no mask. Okay, but the thing is, it's still changed. We are so restricted. We're currently in a school. We're getting ready to build, but we can't do anything. They're already viewing us so vastly different than 2 years ago. And we're probably in the freest state of the land, but still, we already know it's coming. There's a day coming where this culture will no longer, buddy up to the church, give into the church, and they're already starting to turn. So are we turning into, or are we quickly becoming like Muslim nations that don't want the Christianity of the church, but they love the business? We've worked with Chick-fil-A a number of times, overseas where, Muslim countries are loving businesses being planted. CrossFit's the #1 business going in Muslim countries right now. CrossFit, If you come over with your business, they're okay with your faith. Just don't come plant a church. Will that be America in 5 or 10 years? Do we have to start putting our hat on and start thinking different ways to plant churches? I love your book when it says, there's not one model to plant a church. You got to think about the context and what's needed, and the Spirit lets you shift and adjust. And I really believe, as Billy Graham said, one of the next great moves of God will happen through believers in the workplace, not in the church place, right? Not in the building. And so we're quickly approaching 5 or 10 years where every church planter is going to have to think this way. What creative way can we reach this community? Let's start with business. And we want to be there to equip them and raise them up for it.
That's really good. Well, Mike, thanks so much, man, for sharing your heart. I'm hearing the passion. You're not a guy who doesn't do stuff. Like, you're a doer. And even for this, you're like, hey, man, because I'll normally like interview off the cuff, and you can see it's hard for me to stay on the rails. I have to follow the muse. But Mike was like, I got to have these because Mike he is theological. He is very much a theologian. In fact, you were kind of like the in-house theologian we would tap at times on the training team. And yet, you're very business savvy. It's a rare combination of perhaps a priest and a king, which is great about you. So we want to talk before we end about some of your, your mentorship coaching. But before we do that, I want to see if there's anyone who has a question or a comment or a limerick or anything that they can shoot in here. Guys, go ahead and shoot it in the chat. There's a Q&A function down at the bottom, but there's also a chat. So Ollie Gray the third says, hey, thanks so much. And, again, thank you, because this is so helpful. So are there any questions you guys have that you would, while we got Mike here, this is live. So if you're if you're watching this, this is not pre-recorded. If you're here right now, we're actually here with Mike on the spot. So you get to ask him whatever. If you've had a burning question, there's so many questions I have that I've not asked, but I would love to hear anything that you guys have. So while we're waiting for the chat to populate, Mike, which one is the most fun to run right now? The pizza, the ice cream, the gym? And don't worry about hurting the other businesses' feelings. Which out of your multiple businesses that you run are the funnest?
Wow, they're all so different. This is my 40th year in gym training, and I used to bodybuild way back in the day. That's probably still the most fulfilling, that I'm really getting to work with people over the course of 30, 60 minutes and watch them change. In the meantime, look for open doors of the heart. So that's probably the most fulfilling. However, my ice cream shop has the youngest people working in it that we can help change the worldview quickly about what business is. Not all of them go to church, not all of them are saved. So it's interesting working with them and trying to get them to understand the missional intent of our business. Donut shop, baristas are a little older, right? And they're a little more chill. This is a surf environment, if you know Palm Coast. And when we took over, none of them were saved. And so it's a different mentality. Okay, now we just can't infuse Christian worldview here. We've got to actually think evangelistically and practice what we preach. Or we live in the gospel. Is everything we change makes sense to them? That, oh, that's like the Jesus I heard about, not the church I heard about, but the Jesus I heard about. So that's really interesting. We also own an Airbnb where we get to meet with people almost every week from all over the country and the world and just speak into them. Commercial landowners, and so we have tenants of other businesses right here in town, and also not saved. So we get to just rub shoulders with a life-giving mentality, and they, not necessarily to lead them to Christ, although that's the ultimate intent, but to show them there's something different about these two pastors that run this church and how we do business. Because in most people's mind, those are two opposite things, these pastors and business owners. But how do we do it? And how are we the same on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all week long? And it's been a joy to watch God shift some of their hearts towards Him as we move along. So they're all just a little different, and that's what makes it so fulfilling. We're in the best season of our life because our kids now are working with us. So my oldest son is running the donut shop here. My middle son was running the ice cream shop. Now he's shifting over to the crepe shop. And so my youngest son will be shifting over to the waffle cone ice cream shop. So it's been cool also now to model for them what missional businesses look like and what missional business thinkers, how we make decisions, how we act with people. So it's been cool. Now we're entering into modeling for our kids and the next generation.
That's fantastic. Well, one of the things, are there any types of businesses that you can think of that, maybe they aren't the ones that you're doing right now? Like you mentioned taking over a business. Like I could remember being a window cleaner, and I had to knock on the doors of everyone that I wanted to drum up new business for. I went into it with a partner who had an established route, and I joined him to make some money on his route for a bit. But then I had to drum up new clients too. So the difference I can see, like you would make zero money versus making good money right away if you use someone else's existing route. But window cleaning was an amazing church planning job for a couple reasons. And in the book, as you know, I mentioned like the different ways of weighing whether or not this is good for a planner. Like for example, the how much time will it take me? Is it going to be 40 plus hours a week? Maybe that's not good for a planner. How much money will it make me? Is it going to make me minimum wage? So Starbucks was a 40-hour a week job. I made minimum wage, and then but it got me around. I was in the hub of the community in a country it rained every day. Are there any jobs that you think I've heard people say real estate? I've heard people talk about being a notary. I've got a few planter friends that are doing notary work, making quadruple what they made before, like trying to make ends meet. Are there any kind of businesses that you think, yeah, these are the kind to go for or look for?
Right now, it's Florida. I'm a little bent towards one, but I helped a guy in Massachusetts who wanted to start a coffee shop in Hyannis and then grow a church out of it. If you know much about Hyannis, they're not keen to necessarily churches and church plants, but an old community. So what we said is, oh, look, are you wired for church? He came down at the time we had a coffee shop in town. So that's another one we did with Life Coast Church. Worked in there a little bit. And he says, I don't think I'm wired for business owning. I said, but maybe it's not Kobo, maybe it's Bivo. And he became a real estate agent. And I said, let's catch the vision of this, because you are planting a missional endeavor in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. How many people will you get in front of every day that are visiting your community and potentially living there, and who you got to be a part of making that decision? You've already earned trust. And then in the journey of looking for homes and closing on a house, you get to express who you really are and then what you do also. And he went with it and started the church and being a real estate agent. And he goes, I'm loving it. I don't necessarily, I'm not a broker, but it is my little deal. I got my people and I see them during the day, and some of them do show up at church. Others, they're just still kind of moving along, moving in and stuff. So that is one way in Florida here. You know, real estate's booming because everyone seems to want to live here. And you know, it's just kind of a little easier track if you get with a good broker. I'll say this though, you got to, for our coaching piece, you have to understand who you are. There are those who are go-getter extroverts. If you started a pool cleaning company, a window, I helped a guy start one in Dallas, and you're a good door knocker, you're good with people right up front. I'm just going to tell you, you can get in people, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 homes a day as a minister of the gospel with a business hat on, you know. And so if you think about that, if that's your kind of wiring, you can grow one of those small service end businesses very quickly with very few upfront money. I mean, you know the deal. Window cleaning, you could probably get by with $500 worth of equipment to start, and you'll be good. You just start knocking on doors. I would still recommend be mentored in how to do it well, how to do customer service well and all that, get your coaching and running a business. But some of those, if you're good at it, you're a good extrovert, you can make friends fast and network well, man, go for it. Go for that small end business. I helped many people get into the power washing business because that's what we sold up north is power washers. Just coached them, taught them business principles, 6 months off and running, and they're washing houses. Then they moved to commercial, moved to skyscrapers. So you can do that relatively cheaply, you know, within the couple thousand to 10,000 tops. That's what I'd say. Is like, you got to know your wiring. If you're just not wired real well to knock on doors, but you want to, hey, I want to move into existing business. I'm a friend among friends. I just don't want to knock on that door and deal one-on-one.
Yeah.
I want to consider a different business.
Right. It's good, man. That's really good. Well, look, Mike, you've got a lot to teach, and I know you personally. You're a guy that I've talked with many times about doing stuff together. But if someone wanted to get a hold of you and say, "Hey, I wanna learn from you. I want to be mentored by you," or do you have a course or a program or something that you could take me through? What does that look like?
So I would say connect with me on Facebook first. You can always email me and at Pastor Mike at lifecoast.org. Facebook might be easier just because it's a landing page, where you can just start throwing questions at me. I'll tell you this, it's not in the completion stage yet, but kind of like your book 6 months ago or 8 months ago, it's like it's a lot of it's up here, this whole coaching piece. But if you've done anything with NAM and send assessment center, send training, I got to, like Peyton, be with Mac when this whole genius was coming out of the brain and formulating assessment centers and then coaching after and then training up trainers to train to coach those church plants. I got to watch that whole thing unfold. And about a year and a half ago, I thought, wait a minute, this is what we want to do with businesses. Assess, is this me or not? Coach, let's get around you and teach you all those, what I call the 5 major areas of a successful business. And then, we'll train and we'll even get you internships and let you get under the hood. And then we have funding after. We have investors who want to invest in people who have completed a training. And so it just needs to get out. And, you know how hard that is. It's easy to keep it in your head and actually put it on.
And don't be surprised if Mike and I end up doing something together. So he's a guy I would travel with any day and work with any day. But definitely, is that just getting a hold of you at looking up Mike Wehde on Facebook? Just connecting with you there. He'll be the fit one, not eating donuts. And anyways, Mike,
but I'm not eating.
It's great. So, guys, thanks for joining us today. Mike, really on behalf of the New Breed Network that I run and ministryninja.com, I want to thank you for coming on here, for spending your time to talk with all these planters and leaders and people that want to learn about this. So there goes my train. It's like Mr. Rogers is telling me it's time to go. So with that, everybody, it's back to the real world. Like we say on the Church Planter podcast, we got to leave the land of make-believe now and go to the real world. So get in touch with Mike. Get in touch with me if you want. If you're like, I can't find Mike, I'll hook you up with him.
And read Church Plantology.
Yes, Church Plant. There we go. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you next month on the next one, which is actually going to be with Mac Lake. Mike, a mentor that Mike and I greatly appreciate. He brought us together as friends, and Mac is he is the architect. If you've ever watched The Matrix, he's the architect. That's who he is. He architects things. He's amazing. And we're going to be talking to him about his passion that you can find on Mac Lake Online. Just give him a shout out right now ahead of time. If you like what you've heard from Mike and you like what you heard from me, Mac Lake has his fingerprints all over us. But he's going to be talking about Leadership Pipeline, which is another piece of this puzzle that Mike has helped give us today. So we'll see you next month. Mike Wehde, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Appreciate you all.